This is Carla for Rehan Allahwala's World of Connection and also the Ministry of English Literacy. And I am excited because today I am getting to speak with the famed coach in Pakistan for teaching English and using technology to teach English throughout Pakistan. And I think she's also known throughout the world. She will introduce that in a few moments to us and everyone in watching. And we are here to speak about what she does when it comes to teaching English throughout the world. As you know, I am the Minister for English Literacy for the Insan Party of Pakistan. And having said that, Shireen, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you so much, Carla. Once again, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I am here in Pakistan, but I'm not entirely Pakistani. I'm half Turkish. My mother is Turkish. And English is something that has been in very close practice with me. My mother used to love the English movies that used to go on air. So it was our responsibility to translate the movies to her because she did not know English as fluently as we did. So listening uh, attentively helped us to improve our listening and our ability to talk and write. That was our first initial steps in learning and teaching. And then slowly and gradually, obviously, throughout our academic year, we were practicing. I went through good schooling, good college, and both my parents were very keen on education and learning, and they also helped me learn different and new ways of learning and teaching as well. So it was like a life value that we had common between us, between the parents and us kids. And we just loved teaching other people also, sharing those unique techniques and tools. So fast forward to the time when I needed to start educating my kids. uh, when they started schooling, I did not send them at an early age. Sometimes people here are sending their kids as early as 1.5 and 2.5 year olds to school. But I was not allowed. It came as a blessing because I was able to develop my own techniques of teaching. So I used to make flashcards and stuff. And then uh, when they were in preschool and getting ready for their admission in a bigger school, I had them give the test, but they did not pass. And then I asked the teachers why it was so, because I had made all those flashcards and stuff. And they were so impressed with all that, they instantaneously offered me a job. Like, instead of my kid getting admission in their school, it was me getting admission in their school as a teacher. But since my kids were young, they were 4 and 2, so I chose motherhood over becoming a teacher. And as my kids started their schooling, I saw them struggling because the way things were taught, it was like for English, they had a very modern approach, and for teaching the local language, the national language, Urdu, it was a very traditional approach. So, with two different phonics, uh, the kids were struggling. They had a really hard time, and at times they were very unwilling to study. So I started using colors and whatever knowledge I had. I started compiling it, playing with the idea, and I devised a system of teaching phonics in a certain way that has made teaching uh, English as well as Urdu faster, easier, and better. So now kids really enjoy, and I applied it, teaching it as a social entrepreneur to the domestic helpers, to their kids, and they were able to learn faster and easier. I use a specific mathematical progression method to teach that. So that really helps them progress in whatever they were learning. And even with difficult learners, that's what I carry on. And so I experimented a lot with the students. So from preschool level to university level, I have worked with all sorts of students, professional ladies, non-professional ladies, and all of them have shown uh, really good progress. And during this journey, like this is my professionally, this is my 25 years of journey. In this time period, I also took master trainer classes from Mr. Abbas Hussain. He's the director of Teachers Development Center, a very renowned name, very prestigious platform. And I'm so blessed because he taught us a system which is called Integrated Model of Language Skills, IMLS, and it has helped to further clarify and simplify the process of learning English. So it's very practice based and very practical approach. And with that, even the speaking and writing skills improvement has been so amazing that I was doing this social action project for someone in which I was teaching them English, and it was just a 1 week program. So it was just for the concepts clarification, and within that 1 week, the way I taught them, they improved so remarkably. They were starting to get more confident. They were able to understand the text better. They were able to understand and grasp the concepts, and practice practice based approach was so helpful for them that those 100 or 150 girls who had joined that program were all very happy with the program and the way I was teaching them.
How have you been using technology to teach them? Because, you know, the ministry is about using technology and bringing English to those throughout the world.
Yeah. So initially, like the internet, especially in Pakistan, has been quite recent, and I was a late starter. So initially, I used to teach on phone. So by using telephone, I used to teach people, and then moving forward with the internet, I started using Facebook as one of the mediums. Then Skype was my next thing. Then with Zoom, I started using that. Then WhatsApp. So I use a combination of these technologies. Now, primarily, I use Zoom, and uh, sometimes, if it's necessary, I use the option of recording it, recording the lecture. If it's just the lecture in which no pictures are needed, only explanation is there, then I use the WhatsApp recording option. I just lock the recording, and the entire lecture is recorded while I'm presenting on Zoom.
Okay. Are you doing a lecture or are you doing conversation? Tell me more about how you are teaching.
Yeah.
And
So
what age are your students for the most part?
it's it's usually a mixed group, and it varies from time to time. So currently, I have kids from Canada who are Pakistani kids in grades 6 and 9, and yeah, in grade 6 and 9. And there's another student of grade 8 who's in Pakistan. And then I have a home-based business owner who is homeschooling her kids, and she's getting teachers training by me. And there's another student who has passed her intermediate, so she's also doing the teachers training with me on this system. So like it's a mixed blend of students who are learning. So I teach them accordingly as the group forms. Sometimes there's just one learner, sometimes there's a number of people who are there. Last year there were students who were from a village. They were educated girls, but they were from a village. So they were very enthusiastic in learning. So I taught them the basics, how to improve on that. So through WhatsApp groups, through Zoom, through the combined technology systems that there are, I teach that. Sometimes the internet is not good enough, so I start using the cell phone. Otherwise, sometimes it's just we do an audio exchange. Like I would send them an audio, and then they will reply back. I will give them feedback. Even in the group, we have these posts in which I would send them quotations, and I would ask them to read those quotations again and again so that their fluency improves. So, depending on what their particular needs are, I provide them customized programs and plans which would help them improving from the point where they are. So, it's not a one fit for all system that I would flog everyone into completing. It's a very evolutionary sort of a system that I follow, and they grow from where they are to where they want to be.
What are the ages of your students?
The ages of students, since I have 5 kids of my own, and they are now like ages 12 to 28. So I taught them from very small age to the upper levels. My current age of students is from 11-year-olds to 30-year-olds, 30, 35.
And are the bulk of your students adults or are they kids?
It's a combination. It's like they're there are preteens, there are teens, then there are the older ones, there are ones who have passed the university. So it's again, it's a blend. So I have like different programs running simultaneously for each one of them.
Okay. Do you find that you're teaching more people who are in school now and students in maybe the younger grades in high school, or are you teaching more college kids or even more adults?
There have been a different blend and variety. There was a student who had done her English literature. She was Turkish, but she was in Pakistan, in Karachi, and she was doing English literature. She needed help with her writing, and there were other Turkish students also. So I was helping them to write who were in college. Currently, the 3 students that I have, they are from school. The other 2 or 3, they are like teaching. One of them is teaching in school. The one I mentioned has done her intermediate. The other 2 are home-based entrepreneurs who are working on improving their own selves, and the one who is now learning to homeschool her kids.
Are most of your students kids who are just growing up and they're not in college, or are
Yes.
they more adults?
It's the equal number, because like if three of them are in school, not in college yet, the other three are the ones who are in college or who have
Okay,
done their college and moving forward.
okay. Now, you said you use Zoom. How do you use Zoom with your students?
Okay. So with Zoom, I sometimes join in from the laptop as well as from the mobile phone. So how it works is I use the whiteboard when needed. So I create colorful uh, text to show different aspects of whatever I'm teaching. And then using the mobile phone, I take a screenshot because that
Well,
becomes very much easier.
can we stop and just do one thing at a time? When you are using Zoom, do you have interaction with your students, or are
Yes,
you
I do.
talking to them the whole time?
Yes, I'm talking to them and then I make them repeat or make the sentences, or if when we are doing stories, then I ask them to read so that their fluency gets better. They become more accustomed to pronouncing and reading those words, because they have a lot of inhibition and they are like reluctant whether they are pronouncing right or wrong. So my first uh, intention with them is to make them comfortable and then grow their confidence. So the more they speak, the more they practice, it becomes easier for them. And that's how through interaction uh, we work on it.
When you're doing a lesson,
Mhm.
how long are your lessons for the most part?
My lessons last from 30 minutes to about 90 minutes.
And what are the components of the lesson? Do you introduce conversation? Do you introduce a story? You know, what are the basic components?
Okay, so I'll explain it step by step. So if we are doing the practice of instructions, right? So then I would give them short scenarios. And before that, in fact, I explain a related concept. Like in instructions, we always start with the verbs, like do this, pick this, blend this, mix this, and so on. So it's and instructions are always in the present tense, and instructions always have a sequence. So I
Okay.
first clarify that for them, the concepts, and then uh, I give them an example, and then I give them the format of following that example, and then they do 2 to 3, depending on the length of the class, different examples, practical examples of how they have learned and how they are going to apply those concepts and produce that text, instruction text.
Okay. If I was to come to one of your lessons as a student, there are, when you're teaching, there's always a, you know, a structure to learning.
Yes.
You may start each class with a story about the topic and go from, okay, you tell the story, talk about what they want them to listen to, which really would come before reading the story, and then you would speak to your students and have them respond. Is
Yes.
this sort of what you do on a regular basis?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Can you tell me the your daily structure of for your students.
Yes. So the daily structure is like depending on the weekly theme that we are practicing, uh, whether it's the instructions or descriptions or narrations, I start with a related text or a story. So if they are doing a descriptive essay or just a description, like I'm trying to teach them how to describe things, right? So I help, like I read out something or send them a picture of a text which they can read, and then I read it out to them so that they can listen. In this way, they are able to memorize the structure. They learn by listening. And listening is the most important component of learning. Then, using the Zoom option of screen share, I uh, share the text again, and then I start marking out concept words, specific words like the nouns, the verbs, differentiating them. Then I help them understand how it comes up, right? One after the other. In description, obviously, there is no sequence. Any sentence can come before or after the other. Like, for example, if it's a descriptive essay about coffee, so we can say that coffee is a drink which is taken hot and cold. It is grown in Brazil. It has a slight bitter taste. Now, we can put any sentence before or after the other. It would not change the content. It would not uh, do any uh, confusion for the student. If, for example, we were doing the narration part, I search up simple stories, one-page stories for the beginners that they can read, and then I read it out to them. If they are good, if they are a little advanced learners or in the intermediate stage, then I encourage them to read so that they are able to read aloud and become more confident and more fluent in their delivery. Doing that, then they, after the listening and reading part, we start selecting the words. The main idea is that they learn to identify and then distinguish and then classify those words. Once they are able to do that, then they are in a position and ready to put those sentences or those words in order. So with this, when they learn the basic sequence of subject, verb, object, then I help them to further elaborate those sentences using adjectives, using adverbs, replacing pronouns, changing the genders, like practicing the learning and practicing understanding the concepts of how those words change and how, if they are changing the gender in the story or the text, how that changes the format of certain pronouns, and uh, how the first person, second person, third person uh, concepts are affected. And similarly, if it's a direct conversation, like in active voice, then how to change it into passive voice. If it's a passive voice text, how to change it in a active voice uh, format. So again, depending on the theme of the day or the week, that is how those concepts are slowly and gradually structured. So they go through all the four stages of listening, reading, speaking first, and then finally writing. Writing is in the least priority phase.
Yeah. because actually writing is the most difficult to learn.
Yes. Yes.
Speaking is the easiest, although
Yes.
it seems very difficult, and then
Yes.
reading comes after speaking. Having said that, you brought up a very important point, and it's actually the theme of the conference coming up for the Ministry of English Literacy on November 7th and 8th online. And that is communication. And its communication includes both speaking and listening. Could you give me your thoughts on those two components of communication?
Yes. Uh, these are the most important aspects. Listening being number one, and speaking being number two. The very first thing any learner of English needs to understand is that there are two aspects of learning any language. There are inputs and there are outputs. Unless there is an input, there won't be an output, or the output would be faulty. So, listening and reading are the input aspects of the language, whereas speaking and writing are the output aspects of the language. So, like I started with the introduction, and I mentioned that my mother used to love English movies, and it was our responsibility. Initially, it was my father's responsibility, and later on, after the divorce, it was our kids' responsibility to translate, listen, and translate simultaneously, instantaneously, the entire movie of what is happening and why is it happening and who is saying what. So we were constantly attentively listening. And that listening, attentive listening, helped us to sort of have, just like a muscle memory, it was like an auditory memory in our minds of how sentences are structured, how people talk to each other, how conversations are built, how interactions and dialogues take place. So that was the key aspect. That is where we started observing different accents and learning how certain words are spoken in different ways. Like Yul Brynner had a different way of saying those words, and uh, uh, other actors had different way of speaking those same words. The diction, the pronunciation, the tone, the pitch, everything is like interrelated. Like it just adds up to that. And since we had allocutions at our school, so we were also trained along the way during our academic years on how to express, how to speak, and how, as listeners, people can hear and understand or not understand someone. So the listening aspect is so important. Anyone who wants to improve, firstly, will benefit most by listening. The more they listen, the better it will be. Secondly, the I would like to quote you here that you can't speak by texting. In order to speak in English, you need to actually speak and not just text. So that is so true. You can only speak by speaking. You cannot speak by texting or even reading. Reading is like the uh, first step in speaking, because when I used to love books and my father used to read books to me and comic strips, and he taught me to read aloud, and he taught me to read in different accents and different voices. Like if we were speaking from Bambi's voice, we would start squeaking. If we were talking from an elderly person's voice, we would change the voice and speak like an adult person, make those acting in what this like voice acting. So that reading was our removing the inhibition of speaking, and then actually speaking is when we were actually doing that. And you remember a group we were both in, that group encouraged people to speak on different topics, and that even for me, although I was teaching for a very long time, it was a really good practice as a teacher to daily speak on a topic, anything. And I was able to really brush up my skills. And the more I started teaching online, it just improved more and more, because earlier when I was teaching the uh, domestic helpers and their kids, I used to speak in my own Urdu language and then help them understand English. But when I started giving the classes and doing Facebook Lives and my uh, presentations on YouTube, etc., I was actually speaking in English. So initially, I was very slow. I used to think first and then speak. So it seemed like I was uh, talking in pauses, long pauses. But as it became more and more frequent, even my own fluency improved. So the listening and the speaking are the most important components of communication.
And also, would you say they are the most important components of learning any language?
Yes, definitely, definitely. Because
And
my father, excuse me, my father went for training to Turkey, and the teachers who knew English would never speak in English. They would only reply if the students spoke in Turkish. So, like you said, in learning any language, unless we speak, unless we practice, it won't happen.
do you think the technology that we use today, like I use Zoom quite a bit, is helpful in learning a language and learning for people to come together globally throughout the world?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Technology has made it so much more easier. And even though the pandemic was very challenging for everyone, the presence of technology really helped us to connect and stay, like, reduce the effects of isolation that we were experiencing.
Okay. Do you have any last words to say before we close this interview?
I would say that if you want to learn any language, whether it's English or any other language, these days kids are learning 3 to 4 languages, 5 languages at a time. So the best way is to really, really focus on listening and then repeating that, copying that, different aspects, so that your speaking improves. So the input needs to be really strong, and listening is the best way to do it. The TED Talks, TED, TEDx talks are a really good medium to listen to really quality topics, and uh, they can read it through captions also, write it down, start repeating the same things, like initially just repeating what they heard, and that will help them improve their speech.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for speaking to me tonight, and I look forward to having you on the conference.
Thank you
And
for
I
inviting.
believe you agreed to come on Sunday, November 7th.
Yes,
And you will be speaking, like everyone, about communication and
Mhm.
education, and how it relates to English literacy throughout the world using technology. With that, I think we're going to end this interview for today. And I wish you a very good day. I want to thank our viewers who have watched. And can we wave goodbye? Bye, everyone. Have a great day.